Today's video is brought to you by Card Kingdom. And right now you can get this sweet Scoop Soldier sticker when you order over on cardkingdom.com. Just mention in your order notes that you want a Scoop Soldier sticker when you check out. Hey friends, it's Tomer, and I'm back with another Commander Quickie. Recently, I did a video covering 5 sweet cards that can be cast for no mana, each costing under $5, link to that Quickie in the video description below. The response was very positive, and you asked for more, so we're back with a second round of sweet budget cards that can be cast for free. We'll go over the strengths and weaknesses of each card, and what decks they work best in. So let's get started. Kicking things off at number 1 is Force of Despair. This flashy removal spell has single-handedly saved me from many lethal situations. If it's not your turn, you may exile a black card from your hand rather than pay the spell's 3 mana cost, destroying all creatures that enter the battlefield this turn. You can use it to remove a single threatening creature cast on an opponent's turn, and that can be a very strong play itself, but Force of Despair shines brightest when it's taking out entire armies worth of creatures. Whether it's Avenger of Zendikar flooding the board with tokens, or Rise of the Dark Realms mass reanimating everyone's creatures, Force of Despair can completely undo your opponent's game-winning plays. As much as I love this card, it's not without downsides. First of all, in order to cast it for free, you need to exile another black card from your hand. So you're spending 2 cards for your removal, and the card is mostly restricted to mono black or 2-color black decks. Usually exiling an extra card isn't that big of a deal for such a powerful effect if you're running a good amount of card draw to keep your hand full, but there will be times where you're hurting for cards, and exiling an extra one can be a real pain. However, the regular casting cost is just 3 mana, and while keeping 3 mana up is obviously much harder to do than not having to keep up any mana at all, it's not impossible for some decks to consistently just cast it for mana instead, especially decks that regularly play at instant speed, aka draw go decks. The other drawback is Force of Despair's timing restriction. It only destroys creatures that enter the battlefield this turn. This means that if there's a threatening creature entering the battlefield, you only have that turn to decide whether or not to kill it. You can't wait a few turns and do it later. While this sometimes forces you to pull the trigger on killing a creature earlier than you'd like to, I personally haven't had much issue with the timing restriction. Overall, Force of Despair is a really unique and powerful removal spell that I think is currently underrated in the Commander community. It's a strong choice in any mono black or 2-color black deck, but it's especially powerful in decks that can regularly hold up mana on opposing turns. By far my favorite home for Force of Despair has to be Toshiro Umezawa, which absolutely loves instant speed kill spells and can easily cast it for mana or for free as needed. Next we have Misdirection, one of my favorite gacha cards that enables super swingy plays. You may exile a blue card from your hand rather than pay its 5 mana cost to change the target of target spell with a single target. It's a fantastic way to protect yourself from targeted removal, redirecting format staples like Swords to Plowshares and Beast Within away from your stuff and hitting your opponent's stuff instead. Effectively a 2 for 2 if you cast it for free, or a 2 for 1 if you paid the mana cost. You can also use it to counter magic, such as protecting your spell from a counter spell by redirecting it to target your Misdirection instead. On rare occasions, you'll even get to live the dream and redirect an opponent's huge Blue Sun Zenith or Time Stretch to your own face and feel like $1,000,000, but again, these are very rare occasions. Just like Force of Despair, the most obvious drawback to Misdirection is that you need to exile another blue card from your hand in order to cast it for free, which can hurt if you're low on cards in hand and does restrict you to playing it mostly in mono blue or 2-color blue decks. Also, unlike Force of Despair, the regular casting cost is a whopping 5 mana, which is difficult for most decks to keep that amount of mana up, except for draw go decks. The very high casting cost makes it pretty bad if you aren't casting it for free. But the biggest drawback to the card comes down to expectations. A lot of people look at Misdirection expecting it to work like a flexible counter magic spell, but it's not. It's a relatively narrow spell that is used primarily as protection against targeted removal. If your deck isn't overly concerned about protecting a specific permanent against targeted removal, then this card isn't useful to you. However, in blue decks that want want this effect, particularly blue decks that are heavily reliant on their commander sticking around, Misdirection is a consistent mana-free way of protecting them. For this reason, I highly recommend Misdirection in blue decks like Niv-Mizzet Perun, Tatyova Benthic Druid, and Talrand Sky Summoner. Blue heavy decks that really want to protect their commanders and are usually swimming in card draw to pay the cost of the sweet free spell. Misdirection gives these commander-reliant decks the breathing room they need to establish their board presence and snowball out of control. Next up, we've got Abolish. White has a lot of sweet ways to remove target artifacts and enchantments. Cards like Return to Dust, Crush Contraband, and the flexible Generous Gift all show up fairly often. But White also has a powerful option that costs no mana at all. Abolish can be cast by discarding a Plains from your hand instead of paying its mana cost to destroy target artifact or enchantment. Now, some people may dismiss Abolish right away as an inferior option to other similar forms of artifact or enchantment removal. It doesn't exile or hit 2 targets like Return to Dust, nor does it have the ability to target other kinds of permanents like Generous Gift. But the ability to cast Abolish even when you're fully tapped out is incredibly potent, since Commander is full of artifacts and enchantments that must be answered the moment they enter the battlefield. Whether it's someone comboing off Imprinting Dramatic Reversal on Isochron Scepter, or dropping down a Rhystic Study that you know Seth, probably better known as I Never Pay the One, will just hand them the game the moment he untaps, sometimes you need to act immediately or you'll lose the game. And that's where the difference between paying 4 mana for Return to Dust versus paying 0 mana for Abolish becomes highly relevant. Discarding a Plains from your hand is a pretty restrictive cost, probably more restrictive than just exiling a white card from your hand in most decks, though pretty much any mono white deck can pull it off. However, white is particularly good at filling hands with excess Plains. While not what I'd call budget friendly, one of the most powerful cards in the entire format, Land Tax, ensures you'll always have Plains in hand to discard. Another card that I love in mono white decks, Endless Horizons, provides a similar role to Tax, even if significantly weaker. Overall, I'm happy to recommend Abolish in just about any mono white deck and some 2-color white decks, especially if you're running ways to fill your hand with Plains like Land Tax. Free, flexible spot removal is always great to have. At number 4, we've got Invigorate. Invigorate has one of the easiest requirements to cast for free. All you need to do is control a forest, non-basic forest counts 2, and have an opponent gain 3 life, and you can give a creature +4/+4 until end of turn. The drawback to this card is almost non-existent. Pretty much any mono green, 2-color green, and most 3-color green decks will consistently have a forest in play, and giving an opponent 3 life is totally negligible. You'll always be casting Invigorate for free without issue. With a non-existent drawback, the question of running Invigorate becomes, is giving a creature +4/+4 worth a card slot? And while most random generic decks will say no, in many decks the answer is a resounding yes. Some of the most powerful green cards are keyed off creatures' power or toughness. By boosting the creature for free with Invigorate, you can draw 4 more cards off Return of the Wild Speaker, generate 4 more mana off Selvala Heart of the Wilds, or effectively give a creature +8/+8 after Xenagos God of Revels doubles its power and toughness. In many green decks that scale heavily off power and toughness, Invigorate is a powerful free way to boost other cards. It's an all-star in Gargos Vicious Watcher, Selvala Heart of the Wilds, Infect decks like Saskia the Unyielding, and so much more. Finally, rounding out the list is Reverent Mantra. Reverent Mantra is an oddball card that hardly anyone knows exists, let alone plays. You may exile a white card from your hand rather than pay its 4 mana cost to give all creatures protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. Just like Misdirection, Mantra's primary role is protecting important creatures, usually your commander, from target removal. But it can be devastating in other more rare situations as well. You can use its protection offensively by giving your attacking creatures protection from the color of would-be blockers, letting them swing in unblocked. Or if you're ahead on board, you can effectively counter red damaging board wipes like Blasphemous Act by giving creatures protection from red. Also note that all creatures gain this protection, not just your own creatures, which has some interesting applications. You can use this as a political tool to help an opponent, or you can mess with your opponent's board, fizzling an opponent's Hunter's Insight by giving creatures protection from green so it becomes an illegal target, or giving all creatures protection from black so an opponent's Animate Dead falls off and the creature dies. These situations, while uncommon, are an absolute delight when they occur, and you get to entertain the table with this sick obscure card. Now, Reverent Mantra isn't some obscure format all-star. Casting it for free requires exiling another white card from your hand, it doesn't protect non-creature permanents, and it does nothing to protect your creatures from most forms of board wipes such as Damnation. When it comes to protecting your own creatures, it's certainly weaker than Flawless Maneuver overall. However, despite its narrow applications, Reverent Mantra is a powerful budget tool for mono white or 2-color white decks looking for good ways to protect important creatures, usually their commander, from targeted removal. I've been testing it in a bunch of mono white decks like Teshar, Ancestor's Apostle, Darien, King of Keldor, and God Eternal Oketra, and so far I've been very impressed with the results. And that's it for this Commander Quickie. 5 more cards under $5 that can be cast for free and I think are really sweet. If you like these lists and want me to do 5 more of them, then let me know in the comments section below, and also feel free to suggest any other topics you want to see covered in a future Commander Quickie. That's all I got for now, so until next time, friends, see ya! Thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up with the latest and greatest, click on the subscribe button, and don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to check out similar videos, click on the links here and here.